Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to another edition of Real Spiritual Talk Radio. I'm your host, Lamont Gates, bringing you the world of faith, metaphysicality, and spirituality. Today, my guest was delivered an uplifting message concerning humanity during her near-death experience. Joining me today, ladies and gentlemen, is near-death experiencer Alba Kambouris. Alba, welcome to Real Spiritual Talk Radio.
Thank you.
Glad to have you on. Now, Alba, typically I start off with the religious question with my guests before I go into any of their near-death experience accounts. In your particular case, did you have any spiritual or religious beliefs prior to having your near-death experience?
Not really. Just ordinary ideas that everybody has here and there, I would guess.
Did you have a concept of the afterlife? Did you believe that when people die, they might cross over to somewhere else?
I did have a concept of that only because I spent from age 4 to 7 in a hospital where I got no visitors. It's one of those sad little stories. And in that place that I spoke only Spanish. No one spoke Spanish, so I had no one to talk to me. And so what ended up happening, and being a child, I didn't call it anything like ghost, spirit, any such name. I had no idea of it. All I know, it spoke to me in my head, and it guided me.
So obviously you are no stranger to hospitals. You've been in there since a child. Why don't we move into what it was that actually triggered your near-death experience? Tell us about the day that occurred.
Well, I really can't say the day it occurred. I could tell you the season it occurred. It was summer. The year was 2000. And I was having really bad pain. And eventually it took me to an emergency room where it turned out to be an appendicitis. And they prepared me for surgery really quick. And in there they inserted Cipro, they call it, the medicine Cipro. And then, are you allergic to this? I said, I never heard of it. So it was an emergency. So they got me ready really fast. And remember, I was going around with this pain for 4 days before it was even looked at. So it was a really emergency. And they got me in there and they attached the Cipro. Once the Cipro started to go through my body, I could feel that I was having trouble breathing. And I'm telling them this. Everyone that was there were listening. They were saying, be quiet. This is an emergency. We have to get you to the OR room, And finally I stopped complaining because one nurse said, just be quiet. Soon you'll be out. You'll be sleeping and it won't matter anymore. And she was right. I went out like a light and it didn't matter anymore. So that adventure, I'm hearing the doctors go screaming and then code blue. They're screaming code blue at the same time. They're saying my name over and over, wake up, breathe, breathe, very panicking. And the moment I did attempt to wake up, I found like there was a pillow over my face and nose, and I couldn't get any oxygen. And being very, very claustrophobic, I actually sat up on my back, sat up on the orbit and moved out the bed, just took off. There was only one empty space and there was a room, a wall, and I leaned against that wall. I knew I was gone. Not like a lot of people would say now that I listened to it, I didn't know I was gone, I was dead. I knew I was dead. And I was glad to be there. I was saying, this is so cool. So I was leaning against this wall and I said, I'm watching everybody there in the room. It was crazy. The the main doctor from the Cold Blue was different than my surgeon, and the girl was nervous. The room was kind of small for whatever they brought in machines, and it was very crowded. And the doctor was very unhappy with the room size, I guess, and he was just very cranky. And the nurse was trying to help, and she knocked over the instrument tray, which went right to the floor. And I watched her as she tried to pick it up, and while she's doing, the doctor's scolding and yelling at her the whole time. And she started to cry and be upset. And another person walked in the room and stumbled over her, and it became very chaotic. And I curiously looked to see what I looked like. I said, now what do I look like? So I looked down at my body, and I could see myself, like I could see through myself, like a light bulb, really. And after a little while being there, watching the craziness that's going on there, I actually started laughing because it looked like something from a comedy, not real. I don't know how this happened, but it was very seamless. Just like when I set up on the bed and got out of there, it was very not a big deal to me. I knew, let me go. And then after a while being there, my attention was drawn away from the area for a little while, and then when, I don't know, seamlessly I end up in a very dark space. Whether or not I was in the same room or not, I don't know, or I was moved to another space. I didn't have that feeling. The only time I felt any real action that I did was when I first set up off the table and got off the table. That was an action I actually felt I did. The part that all of a sudden went, well, after being there for a while watching, I seamlessly end up in a very dark area, dark. I would say it was dark sky, but I have no way to verify that. It was dark. It was so dark you couldn't see anything at all. And I was just very amazed. I was like, this is really nice. First of all, remember, I was in pain. I'm not in pain. And the thing was, I was in a hospital because the years that I told you, no one came to see me. My family didn't seem interested in me, and I became like a very cold fish. I used to think I had no love for people. And that's one thing I really learned. So when I ended up in a dark space, just there, I began to get curious. And I said, I wonder what I look like. What do I look like now? And I was shown like a orb, very immovable. It's not just round, kind of moves. And inside looked like electrical storm was going through it. Flashes of blue and white. And this is what I look like now. I'm thinking, wow. And still I was not nervous, and I started to feel a sense of immense love in my heart, love I never felt. I mean, around that time, I must have been 50 years old. I really never felt that love for people. I felt love for my children. I had two at the time. But I never really felt love outside for anyone, including my own family, my siblings, my parents. I just never felt connected to them. And to anyone else, really. People I would meet, jobs I had, I just never felt connected to people. And in that orb, I realized that I did love, and that I was nothing but love. And it was very peaceful, and that made me realize that that I was really not free in this world because of the way I felt. Not, just very suspect of people. Very my walls built up pretty high and easily get into fights with people, sadly. But that's my experience. That's really eventually after being there for what I consider a while, because after a while I said, okay, where are the angels? Where is the light? What's next? I'm ready for the next step. And nothing for a while. And then after a while I'm starting hearing my name being called. But that name was being called by my doctor. And he was calling loud. And I was not listening to him because I knew if I listened, I'm done, And finally, not on my terms, but the universe term. Next time, but when they finally called me loud, I opened my eyes and I'm back in that same bed with that same doctor. And eventually he visits me in the recovery room. And he says to me, boy, did you create a commotion in that room. It was crazy in that room. And then I said, yeah, doctor, that was crazy. And I started to share everything I just shared now, with the nurse knocking over the tray and him yelling at her and she crying, and the guy that walked in there tripping over her. And I thought, I said, you were kind of hard on her. You should have maybe apologized to her, because I was really fine. And he was just staring at me. And he finally I said, what's wrong, doctor? Why do you know? He says, I just don't know how you know these things. And I said, I don't know either.
Yeah, that is a very, very detailed account there. I have a few questions for you.
Okay.
Going back to when you had trouble breathing, I know you said that you rose up or took off from the table. Are you saying at that point in time that that's when you had what's commonly described as an out-of-body experience? You separated from your physical body?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, yeah, it pretty much sounds much that way. Then you stated that you attempted to look at yourself. You wanted to
Yes.
see what your physical body looked like. And you said that there was some sort of illumination to it.
It was in bright, but it was there. I could see through it. I could see where my legs were formed and the part of my torso that I could see down when standing against the wall. Mm-hmm.
Well, while you're above your physical body and you're looking down, you talk about this chaos that's going on.
No, I
At,
wasn't. I wasn't above my body at that point. I was still leaning against the wall, watching the chaos in that room.
I see. So you were not yet out of your physical
I
body.
never. No, I was out of my body. I was not above it. I was against the wall watching. I could see myself on the bed. I couldn't see myself above. I wasn't above her. I could see she was on the bed.
So you were kind of to the side of your body.
Yes.
I understand now. Okay. Either way, you're still separated from your physical body and you're watching the chaos while you're separated. Still considered an out of body experience, no doubt. At any given time, was there fearfulness when you saw yourself looking at your physical body? I know later on you said you began to laugh at the chaos, but initially, was there any fear when you saw
No,
yourself disconnected?
no, there was never fear in me. It's almost very natural. I don't know if I'd done that before. I wouldn't have that memory, but to me, it was very natural to just get up and leave.
So the separation to you felt natural,
Yes,
like waking out of bed.
yes,
Then you say you moved into an area of complete and sheer darkness to the point where you saw absolutely nothing. Was there any fear that kicked in there at any given time?
None. I was very, very peaceful. I felt so loved and protected. No, there was none. There was more curiosity as to what I looked like. No. I no
And,
longer could see the operating room or the chaos going on anymore, just that darkness.
yeah, and while you're in that darkness, it appears that the only thing you are able to see is what you just stated right now is when you attempted to look at yourself in this particular space, and you said you saw an orb of light and what looked like a storm brewing in the
Yeah,
midst of it.
yes. I asked what do I look like? I wondered what I look like now. And that's what I saw.
Very fascinating. And then you say you felt an immensity of love, a type of love that you have never felt, or a type of love that you've never even given out to
Right.
anyone on planet Earth. And I just want to go back to that again. You said while you were in your earthly body, growing up and developing from a child to an adult, you've never felt an attachment to any of your parents, your friends, other family members, etc.
Right.
But
That's
here,
correct.
you felt what you thought you could never feel, and that was an immense love in this
I,
particular place.
so much so that I felt that I couldn't continue in that space. It was so immense. I thought I couldn't hold that.
And at the top of the show, I stated that you returned with a message, and I suppose that's where the message came to you that all humans are love, and that you even stated that you felt that you were not free while you were living on planet Earth because you had this wall built up. You had this protection surrounding you that wouldn't allow you to connect with anyone so that love could be, generated back and forth.
Yes, that's how I felt. I had to protect myself. And coming back from that, it was it was sad.
Now, when
To
you say
know
sad, why was it sad coming back from that? Did you miss where you were?
yeah, that was part of it. And the other part that I didn't know that the capacity to love was that. And there was a capacity to love and be free. Because I used to always perceive very cautious. My aunts would call me in Spanish, they would call me naughty girl because I didn't want to be hugged. And that's why I was sad because I I guess I felt I could do better, and at the same time, I didn't really want to come back. I really didn't want to be here. It was so easy over there. You just thought the thought, and boom, you asked the question, and it was given to you. That
Speak
doesn't happen here.
right. And speaking of questions, did you communicate at all with anyone or anything over there?
No, I didn't talk to anyone. There was nobody there. It's just me, and I didn't speak to anyone. The way I communicate was through my thought. Like when I ask, I wonder what I look like now because I knew I looked different now. I was in a different space, so I knew that was different. So I asked, and instantly, that's what was shown to me.
You then say you began to hear a voice calling your name, and ultimately it ended up being the doctor who was in the operating room with you, and you suddenly returned back to your body. How did that feel? Did you enter into a particular part of your body, or did you just?
It was so seamless. The whole thing was so seamless to me. It was like I didn't have to figure anything out. I just opened my eyes and there I was. the other thing is when I was leaning against the wall initially, and I could see them struggling with me on trying to get my oxygen going. I could see them struggling with me. I could see her struggling, and I see them crying and being upset. And I was thinking, just in my head, I was thinking, I'm fine. What you guys carrying on like this? I'm fine. Don't worry about it. I remember that. But I didn't have any connection to her, you know.
Well, something very fascinating happened when you entered back into your body. Because once you were resuscitated, you were able to tell your doctor. Before we get into that, you said while you were looking at the chaos, you saw that the doctor was very rude to some of the nurses. You saw that one of the nurses knocked over a table, and the doctor was also upset about the size of the room, etc. Once you woke up from this, you told the doctor what you saw, and he looked at you in amazement and stated that, how could you have known that?
Exactly. I told him I have no idea. I knew he would not believe anything I had to say. So,
But in reality, you knew it because you were separated from your physical body, looking at your physical body and what was happening in the room.
yes, absolutely.
There is a term for that, actually. We would call that a veridical near death experience. And what that means is someone who, for example, in your case, has an out of body experience. They're able to observe the room and the situations going on in the room around them. Once they come back into their body and they're resuscitated, such as you were, they tell someone who was in the room that was participating in the event, and that person verifies it. And in this case, you received the verification from your doctor that that stuff did happen.
Yes, absolutely.
This is actually one of many lines of evidence that near-death experiences are true experiences and not hallucinations, by the way. Your account actually puts that out there.
Yes, and it took me, before I told anyone about it, it took me about 10 years to disclose it.
Now, talking about after effects, many near-death experiencers describe usually when they come back from a near-death experience having higher empathy levels. They too love more. They lack the fear of death. They may have precognition, premonitions, etc. I know you said you had a hard time loving on this planet. When you were over there, you realized we are all love. How have you changed since your near-death experience?
Well, I don't look at people suspiciously anymore. I more freer. I'm freer. I've always had an ability of sensing not nice people that have something up their sleeve. I could always, oh, watch out for that one. That became so intense that I could even tell it from a distance now. If someone is not a good doobie, I would say, watch out for that person. If it's someone that's in my family that knows me, I would say that to them. But if someone is a friend, I don't warn them because I don't want them to think I'm crazy. I once time slipped up and shared, oh, that company, that business is not going to do well. And the person said, oh, yes, it's going to do wonderful. And it's a new business that just came up. And I said, I don't think so. And 6 months later, it went down. But that was a slip up on my part because I normally won't tell people that. I would know it without sharing it.
So obviously you've got some precognition going. You definitely are not as suspicious as you were before. You started to give people a chance, in other words, since your near-death experience. Now, you stated that you didn't tell anyone for 10 years. Why is that? Was it out of fear of how people would perceive your mental capacity?
I just didn't want to put people off, really. I'm always, I don't want to look bad in people's eyes. And I don't know how they would think that, okay, she drank too much Kool-Aid. I don't know. I guess near-death experience 24 years ago wasn't all talked about, really. So you just keep saying things to yourself. Yeah, that's about it, really. It was really not. For me, it was, I ended up with a lot of depression after my near-death experience. It was very hard for me to continue because I didn't want to be here. Even as much love I felt, I have so many issues physically that has now caused me to be basically bedridden. So I just don't want to. I think I could do better if I was on the other side. I could help people better than being here. So it was a depression. Saw a doctor for a while because it was sad to be here. It was also very sad for me to be here. Still is.
Who did you communicate your near-death experience to? Outright.
Outright, I think my husband was the first one. And I don't remember who else, really. Many years later, I shared with some close. I have two friends that I've known for a long time. And maybe about 10 years ago, I started sharing with those two friends.
Well, these days, with the advent of the internet and more people becoming aware of the phenomenon of near-death experiences, there are a lot more people, virtually at least, talking about it and are very accepting of it. Yeah. So if you're looking to chat with more people, perhaps the internet of experiencers themselves and people that are interested in the experience is the way to go.
That's how I found you. You reached out to me. That's where I was on there when you reached out to me.
That is correct. I am amongst the near-death experience enthusiasts. Mm-hmm. In addition to being a podcast host on the topic, we opened up with the question on religion, and you said you didn't really grow up with any religion, but you did have a concept of the afterlife. Did this near-death experience change anything about religious beliefs or strengthen you in your understanding of the afterlife?
Since you say there's a lot of programs with near-death experiences, and I've watched many of them, and many of them see God or Jesus, angels, and whatnot. I didn't experience that. But I do believe in God very much, and angels and Jesus. I've always felt very protected. So I could say I believe in God. I just haven't had the real experience, like people that said they spoke to Jesus. Jesus came with a message. I don't have that. And I tried, I didn't even see a little light on the other side.
No, but you did see yourself, and you saw within yourself that you were actually the light. Yes. And I think the most important message you got from that is that humans do deserve a shot to be loved, mm-hmm. versus the way you approached humans prior to having your near-death experience.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that includes yourself as well. You deserve to be loved as well.
Yeah, would have been nice to see an angel too, you know.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure it would have been. But nonetheless, your experience and your account still teaches us a lot. And like I said before, you got verification from a medical doctor that the things you saw out of your body did actually occur.
Yeah,
Not a lot of people get those near-death experiences, by the way.
he was really spooked. He was spooked. I even said to him, maybe you should find a nurse and apologize to her.
Yeah, yeah. And with that said, you were able to actually give some inspiration to the doctor on how he should treat someone, being someone looking, you know how they say, looking from the outside in. Well, that was literal in your case.
Yeah,
You were literally
was,
looking from the outside in.
It was the coolest thing ever. I gotta tell you, it was the cool. I wish everybody could experience that. That was my experience, and I really enjoyed that. That's the best thing that I could say that I experienced here on this earth. The experience of not being here.
Very, very fascinating. And with that said, Alba, I want to thank you for coming on Real Spiritual Talk Radio and sharing with all of us your uh, wonderful account.
You're welcome. Hope you all get something out of it. Something good.
I think all of us will. I know I have.
I'm glad. Thank you. Nice talking to you and nice meeting you.
Same here, ladies and gentlemen. Alba Kambouris.